I'd like to call this meeting to order. We've got a large agenda to cover today. This will be the PPACG CAC meeting, July 26, 2023. So what we do have a quorum, correct, Jared?
We do, and plenty more. So
Okay,
we are
great.
in good shape for a quorum.
Okay. We know that we have Terry Hayes, I believe, is excused. So other than that, I don't have anyone else that's requested to be excused today. Moving on, if we could, agenda approval, I'd like to propose for the sake of time that under 5A and B that we switch those and have 5B first. And if that's acceptable, I'd like to have a motion to that effect.
Paul Clark, a motion to swap 5A, 5B.
Judith Rice Jones, a second.
Okay, any discussion? There is none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That was Kathy, I believe.
Kathy, was that an opposed aye or?
That was an aye. No,
Oh, okay,
it was an aye. I just wasn't quick enough on the microphone.
Okay, just want to make sure we register it the right way. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, having the agenda approved, we'll go on. Approval of minutes. Have you all had an opportunity to review that? If you have, we'll take a motion to accept.
So, Mr. Chair, just a clarification.
Yes, sir.
These are consent items, so the recommended motion would be to approve both of the items at once, unless there's a request to pull them off by a member of the committee.
That's okay.
So it would be both unless someone wants to do.
Item A and B motion would cover both of those.
This is, oh, sorry. This is Miley Foster. I'll make that motion to accept both of the consent items. Judith, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent passes. On public presentations, what we'd like to do, I know there's a fairly large number of people that want to speak on the Broadmoor. What we'd like to do is delay that until we get to the actual Broadmoor presentation instead of doing it during public comment at this time. So at this time, if there's any public comments other than the Broadmoor, we'd not on the correct.
Helps I turn my microphone on. Mr. Chair, I will ask anyone who's online who would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda to use the raise hand function in Microsoft Teams. While we do that, anyone who is in the room who would like to provide a comment for an item not on the agenda, they can go up to the podium at this point. While we have done that, I will also say we did not receive any advanced public comment for this meeting.
Thank you.
And I see no hands raised and I see no one going to the podium.
Okay, so we have no public comment. All right, we'll move on to action items, which we voted to do item B first, site location for Grandview. I believe we have someone here to present on that. Oh, there you are. Okay, sir.
Is the mic on? Okay, I'll just move it a little closer. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Voley. I'm with HR Green. We're a civil engineering consulting firm that has prepared the site location application for the Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District lift station. I think you can see the screen, but if you look on page 1 of the report or on the screen, there's a vicinity map. The Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District is the yellow area on the right side of the map. It's in the Falcon area adjacent to Meridian Ranch Metropolitan District and Four-Way Ranch Metropolitan District. Also out there is Woodman Hills Metropolitan District and a few other districts. The proposed lift station is a little bit difficult to see, and I apologize for that, but it is down at the corner of Judge Orr and Curtis Road. The So Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District is a district that has been created. It's currently bare ground. D.R. Horton is the developer who's proposing to develop it. Both the district and D.R. Horton have entered into an agreement with Woodman Hills Metropolitan District for wastewater treatment. Woodman Hills Metropolitan District has a treatment plant that is called out on there. It's at the south end of Meridian Ranch Metropolitan District's service area. Again, it's a little bit difficult to see, so I apologize for that. It's right in, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right in here. So the proposed project would take the wastewater from the lift station to the existing wastewater treatment plant for treatment. I'm going to skip ahead to, I don't know how to move quickly to another page. It's farther down in the appendices on page 66, I believe. Let's see if I can. Thank you. Yep. Oh, sorry, bear with me. Okay, I found it. So it is page 62. I'm sorry. So page 62 shows the proposed service area of the lift station. The area that is called out as the Horton property is the same as the Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District. There's a different engineering firm that prepared this exhibit, and that's the reason for the difference in naming. And so that is the project that is intended for Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District. There are several other parcels, including Waterbury, KO 1515, Silver Star, and then some parcels without names that Woodman Hills wanted included in the lift station service area. They are anticipating development in those areas, and they would like to have a regional lift station to serve that area. The state and the local water quality management agency, PPACG, places a high importance on regionalization so that we're not creating individual lift stations for every little development and therefore more points of failure. And so Woodman, in the agreement that they signed with D.R. Horton and Grandview Reserve, requested that the lift station be designed to serve all of these properties. So that is some of the reason why it's proposed to be located at Judge Orr and Curtis Road, is to be able to serve all of these properties. I'm going to skip back up. And I'll discuss a little bit of the details of the agreement that was signed. As I noted, Woodman Hills has a current wastewater treatment facility. There is capacity in that treatment facility today for 900 taps from the Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District. To serve more than that, they will need to expand the plant. And that plant expansion is contemplated in the agreement. And the agreement is included in this report as Appendix D, if you're interested in the details of that agreement. If you look at page 3, we define the projections from each parcel that this lift station will serve. Grandview is the lion's share at 3,500 units. All the other units come out to 5,900 total to be served by this lift station. Those are projections. We don't know exactly what's going to occur. We try to be conservative with those to make sure that we are not undersizing the lift station and having capital costs later on that we don't anticipate. So I can't really say for sure if there will be 5,900 units built out there, but that is what the lift station will have capacity for. Then looking down at the next table, at table 2, that shows our proposed phasing of the lift station. The first phase is anticipated to simply be 119 units, which is corresponds to filing 1 that D.R. Horton is proposing in Grandview Reserve. And one of the reasons we evaluated that is, there's always a concern that development could stop for economic reasons or other reasons. And we wanted to make sure that the lift station could function adequately with minimal loading, because sometimes lift stations do not function well without enough loading. So that's kind of our worst case scenario on the low end for having to operate the lift station long term. The second phase is 900 units, and that corresponds to the capacity that exists today in the Woodman Hills wastewater treatment facility that they have dedicated to Grandview Reserve. And as you can see, the max month average daily flow from that number of SFE is 0.15 million gallons per day. And then at build out, we're looking at the 5901 number. As I stated, Woodman does not have current capacity for that. And so our site application is only seeking approval for the 900 SFE, but we've included the full build out scenario so that you all and the state can understand what our long-term goals are out here. Moving down to table 3, that shows the projected WRF, which is water recovery facility, which is Woodman Hills wastewater treatment plant, their projected loading. As you can see at that 0.15 MGD, which corresponds to 900 units, their plant would be at 83% of the hydraulic capacity and 85% of their organic capacity. So well within their existing capacity. You can also see at 1.02 MGD, which is our full build out, it is well over their existing capacity. But again, we're not seeking approval of those flows today. That's our future plans. Moving on to table 4, this is evaluating our pumping conditions and hydraulics and essentially confirming that hydraulically this lift station will work, that our pumps are adequate, that the TDH is doable, and that we have enough net positive suction head. I'd be happy to get into more details of that, but that's definitely something that we've discussed in detail with the SARC and the Water Quality Management Committee. So I will skip over that for now, but I'm happy to answer questions on that. Another significant component of this lift station is our redundancy. And so I'll start with emergency storage. Woodman Hills has required 8 hours of emergency storage at average daily flow. That's a significant amount of emergency storage and will allow their operations staff to respond if there is a failure and implement bypass pumping or getting out a diesel backup pump or, worst case, starting to truck the wastewater if needed. So table 5 shows the volume of emergency storage required at each phase. And so with this proposal for the 900 units, we're proposing 51,600 gallons of emergency storage. And then, when we seek the 5,900 units of capacity, we would have to provide 33,800 gallons of emergency storage, which is significant. The Grandview Reserve Metropolitan District is under contract for a 5-acre parcel at Judge Orr and Curtis Road. And so that 5-acre parcel will provide adequate space to fit 1/3 gallons of emergency storage. Continue on through emergency operation. The lift station will be at build out equipped with 4 pumps, 2 duty and 2 standby. So they'll have 2 backup pumps at any given time. Initially, it will be equipped. It only requires 1 pump to function at the initial condition up to 900 units. And so initially it'll have 2 pumps, 1 duty and 1 standby, which is CDPHE's requirement. The long-term 2 duty, 2 standby is Woodman Hills requirement in excess of the minimum standards that the state has. And we'll be designing the lift station itself to have room to install all of those pumps. There'll also be a generator with an automatic transfer switch. So if there's a power failure, it'll switch over to a diesel standby generator. That's another state requirement that we will meet. And then in addition to all that, we're going to have dual force mains. One will be 8-inch and one will be 14-inch. Those dual force mains will help us manage our flows at the low end. If you have too large of a force main and too few homes, you can end up with the wastewater sitting in the force main too long, and then you have issues with it becoming septic and being difficult to treat and possible odor issues. So that's why we have an 8-inch force main for our initial conditions, and then 14-inch as it grows and needs more capacity. Another benefit of having 2 force mains is that it does provide some redundancy. If we were to have a failure in one force main, they couldn't convey full build-out flow through the other, but they could convey a portion of it through that, which would reduce the amount of bypass pumping that they would have to perform while repairing the force main. Finally, there'll be an automated SCADA system, which will allow the lift station to send alarms and operational statuses to the Woodman Hills operations team. And so they can monitor it 24/7 and know if there are any issues that occur with that lift station. Woodman has an existing wastewater treatment facility and existing lift stations. They have an operations staff that is adequate to operate lift stations of this scale. And it would fit in with, it's similar to the lift stations they already operate in their system. So with that, I know I've moved fairly quickly through it, but I'd like to stop and see if there's any questions that I could answer.
Is this similar to the one that you have on Meridian in Woodman?
So there is are you referring to the, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's behind the Guadalajara
Yes, by
restaurant.
Guadalajara. So
Okay.
that it is, I don't know the exact capacity of that lift station.
But
But it's
similar concept.
similar, yes, very similar concept, similar scale as well.
Okay. I just wanted to get in my mind what it was going to look like. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
And the other thing, I want to thank you for a thorough presentation on paper. This is one of the best ones we've received. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
The other question that I'd have is on the timing of this construction all at once. Is this a phased construction or?
Right, that's a good question. So the initial construction will include everything except for the 2 additional pumps to satisfy build-out conditions and the emergency storage. And
Okay.
so the pumps and the emergency storage will be constructed as they are required based on the, the pace of the development. We don't know when they're going to exceed 900 homes.
Sure.
And we also don't know exactly when Woodman Hills will expand their treatment plant to allow for more than 900 homes to be pumped to it. But everything else will be constructed day one, and the infrastructure will be there to allow installation of those pumps. They won't have to expand the facility to fit the pumps in.
Okay. Judith, did you have a question?
I have to say that I never imagined when I came on this committee that so much time would be spent on this topic. And this has been a learning experience, and I feel like I haven't really gotten there yet. Where does the outflow go from this, from yours?
So it'll go to the Woodman Hills wastewater treatment facility, which is a little hard to see on our vicinity map.
But where does it go eventually?
Oh, from there.
I assume it goes into some body of water.
The Woodman Hills treatment facility discharges into an unnamed creek that is tributary to the Upper Black Squirrel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Miley?
Yes, I have a question to make sure I understand about when the plant exceeds the capacity of Woodman Hills. So that means that someone is watching this and making sure that homes don't get permits until there's enough going down the line. So is that how it works?
Correct. So Woodman Hills would have to sign off on any building permits or certificates of occupancy. I don't know which. That would be a question for the county to clarify. But Woodman Hills is responsible. They will, I may not have mentioned this, per the agreement, they will own and operate that lift station once Grandview and D.R. Horton build it. So Woodman will be responsible for that lift station and their treatment plant. And so they will be the ones that will have to sign off on any, again, either building permits or certificates of occupancy before the county would allow the builder to pull those.
Thank
And
you.
that would be the check and balance there.
Thanks.
Any other, Willie?
Welling Clark, El Paso County. First of all, I want to comment on your application. The boxes were all filled out, unlike a month ago, and I really do appreciate that. And 133 pages of documents that are backing it up, half of which are contracts.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know if you're required or not. I was looking at that and I didn't whatever make it. I just wanted to comment on that, keep that up because that caused problems last month.
Thank you.
From my information edification, I'm looking at the map. Essentially, Meridian is north of 24. The pump is actually south. So the lines will go from, at least that's how I think I'm reading it. So the lines will go from the Grandview area heading south down to the pump station, and then the pump station will then pump it to the waste treatment plant. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's gravity flow from Grandview all the way down to the pump station. And then from the pump station to The waste treatment plant, is that where the 8-inch and the 14-inch pipes are going to be laid?
That's correct. And both of those will be installed in the initial phase of construction.
Okay, great.
And our proposed alignment is following Stapleton, essentially all the way to the treatment facility.
And will you have 8 to 14-inch from the Grandview area down to the pump station itself, or will that be a combination of other pipes?
That'll be a combination in likely larger sizes, given that there'll be gravity and you only use a portion of your pipe with gravity
Right.
flow.
Okay,
We don't have the exact sizing of those yet, and the state does not permit gravity lines, so we did not include that in this particular application.
okay, great. I just want to say I appreciate redundancy. So when you talked about the 8 and the 14-inch in parallel, that is great in case something fails. At least you have partial capability. The second thing is when you build that upgrade for the phase 2, is that going to operate in parallel with the phase 1 as well, or is that a total replacement?
That would be an upgrade to the initial facility. And so we would continue to use the same 2 force mains, and we would use the same building, the same wet well, all of that. It would just be additional pumps that we would put into that building, and the additional emergency storage, which would be separate from the building, but on the same site.
When you add that extra capacity on site, excuse me, sorry, inside that building, does that give you increased reliability if you have a partial failure of one of the pumps there? At least you have others that can take the look and keep. Excuse me. I must be allergic to something. Okay. I mean, but so does that increase the reliability of the system if you have partial failure? Thank you.
I think it increases it somewhat. Day 1 will have 2 pumps and we'll only need 1 to satisfy our hydraulic conditions. So day 1 will have 1 redundant pump. At build out conditions, well, when we exceed the 900 units, we'll have 4 pumps total. 2 will be required for normal operation. And so we have 2 redundant pumps. So you can look at it as having both scenarios having 100% redundancy. Having 2 spare pumps is a little bit better because you have 2 spare pumps. So I would say it increases it slightly, but I think both cases have more than adequate redundancy of pumping.
And so you'll be able to operate at reduced capacity even if there's a failure, and that allows you your mean time between failure to fix it. That's good.
Yep.
How much lead time now at full capacity? You're talking that treatment station is going to be overloaded. How much lead time is required for them? Do you know, to upgrade their capacity to handle the full load? And how is that going to be given to them? Do you know that?
I don't know the specifics, but what I do know is that Woodman Hills does not completely control that timeline because there's a state permit associated with it. And permitting wastewater through the state right now is a very lengthy process, and it's not getting better. And so the agreement anticipated beginning, I believe, what they called phase 1, which is planning and preliminary design, in March of 2024. So that would be the earliest they would begin that process. And I think the time frame that has been talked about is 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
But that is that is very much a guess and not something that we have confidence in.
Right. So at what time would they need to start? 5 to 6 year lead time, do you think? Do they need to get word from Grandview that you're going to be exceeding that capacity when you start to build yours out? Or I'm just worried about something happening where you don't have enough capacity downline and it gets overloaded.
Right. So let's see. I have some.
And that may be out of the ballpark of what your requirements are too. I don't know.
Well, we do have some discussion of the development phasing, but at this point, Grandview, Reserve Metro, and DR Horton are anticipating building approximately 150 homes a year. So at the bottom of page 4, it kind of explains that. Now that's subject to market conditions and, could vary. Grandview, well, DR Horton and Grandview Reserve have to fund their portion of the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. That's all laid out in the agreement. And so to some degree, the way they can control the process is once they provide Woodman that funding, Woodman is obligated to start, the design and permitting of the process. So, the timing of that is very dependent on on Grandview Reserve and DR Horton paying Woodman when they should. And then once that happens, Woodman is contractually obligated to start that process.
Okay, what I was looking for, is there a trigger point where you get to a certain development, they have to start moving?
It's not so much when I mean, it's
Okay.
next year kind of thing, is before even a home is built, before this lift station is built, they're intending to start planning the expansion.
Yeah. Okay.
And if it all goes well, they can have the, the expansion in service in 2029.
Okay.
And the initial projections show that we would need it in 2031. So we have that 2-year buffer that I feel pretty good about because, again, things go slower through the state than you would like.
Much appreciated on the answer. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone online, Jared?
No one has their hand raised, but I think it's probably just at this point, any CAC members who would like to ask a question.
Ed, I have one more question.
Okay.
Back in
Please.
2018, I actually attended meetings and actually read the county's first ever water plan. Significant because the county was founded before the city, and their first ever water plan dates from 2018. I don't remember anything in that about wastewater. Am I just forgetting? Was that addressed there?
It's been a little while since I've looked at the water master plan. If it discusses wastewater, I think it discusses it in regards to return flows and trying to reuse wastewater effluent at a very high level. That I unfortunately don't have a better answer than that.
It just, as a topic, as you can see, I know very little about. It just seems overwhelming to think of all of these going on in that huge area of the county out there. And how it all somehow coordinates. So if you're doing outflow into the Black Squirrel Creek or tributary to the Black Squirrel Creek, I assume some other new developments might be doing that also. So somebody somewhere is looking at all of the outflows to the Black Squirrel Creek.
Yes. So the state permits any wastewater treatment facility, and that's the very long and
Involved.
yes.
Okay.
But yeah, in the Falcon area, the Woodman Hills plant is the only existing wastewater treatment facility that I'm aware of.
I just have a lot to learn. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's quite all right.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, the recommended approval for the site location is the request today for Grandview Reserve Metro District Lift Station. If we could get a motion.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, I recommend approval.
And a second.
Gary Sugar, I second.
Okay, any additional discussion? Comment?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask if there was anyone who would like to make public comment on this particular issue.
Okay,
I don't believe so, but I just want to make that available for anyone online. You can use the raise hand function. Anyone in the room can go up to the podium.
I'm seeing none on the line. Is there anyone in the room that wants to make a comment? Okay, hearing none. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That would be unanimous.
All right. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Let Jared get set here. Okay, we'll move on to now action item 5B. We switched 5A and B, so now it's A is now B. So it's a re-review of the site location for Broadmoor Seven Falls wastewater holding tanks. If I believe the Broadmoor is ready for a presentation here.
I actually watched council yesterday and council appointed 3 city people to this group. I just wondered if that got reported.
They have been appointed. They'll be in our next meeting.
Okay.
Yes. Welling's griping paid off. He wanted everybody to know. Okay, sir.
Good afternoon. Last month when we did it, I was zooming in. Now I'm here. So, Seven Falls. Again, it's a rehearing. I will kind of go over it again. maybe a little briefer, but since you guys have seen it, but then we can ask questions and kind of go from there. Again, it's an application for Seven Falls treatment system consisting of vaults. There will be no discharge. Some of the other things that came up that we've addressed is complete applications. Some of the concerns about if there was discharge at all. But this came about, Seven Falls, you're all familiar with it. There's a restaurant, the 1858 restaurant on site, and that's what this system is going to serve is the effluent from the restaurant and treatment. There previously was a system approved and installed under local jurisdiction, which was through the county. And it was a conventional type leach field with a biometrics pretreatment up at the restaurant site and grease traps as required. But it had an actual leach field, if you are familiar with the site down by the restrooms. We had a sand filter because of the shallow rock conditions for treatment. This is some of this again is just kind of giving you the background of what's there now. This is not what we're proposing to do. The infiltrators, and because of the proximity of the creek, here on the perimeter of this, we installed a barrier, a membrane that went down 6-7 feet to increase the flow length from the facility towards the creek. We had adequate distance, but the county at that time wanted additional flow distance for the effluent. Again, by the time it's here, it's been treated at the Advantex biometric system through the grease trap and then through a tank settling and then into the chambers and then treated by the sand as well. There's the membrane as they were starting to install it along the sides on the creek side of the field. Tanks were installed, conventional type septic holding tanks. They had pumping chambers to pump in, and the restroom facility off here you see to the right there, that also flowed into the system. And here down, do I have a pointer? Here we go. Here we go. Seven Falls is right in here, the actual restaurant. The pre-treatment stuff was here in this area, and then the line was run down the road here to the soil treatment area, which is right next to the restroom here. And that's where the system now, why we're here today is because with the flows they have, they're now over 2,000 gallons a day. And local jurisdiction is up to 2,000 gallons a day. Once it gets above that, it goes to the state level. And that's why we're here. This map here shows the service area of the city of Colorado Springs utilities. And Seven Falls is outside of that, way down here. And so the tying in was not feasible at this time. The tie-in points, Seven Falls is here. There's a tie-in point up here near Evans and Cheyenne Canyon Road, and all the way over here on Penrose. Both of those, they're fairly similar distances, 1.2 something and 1.37 miles to tie it in. Rough estimates of costs were $1.5 million to tie it in. So this is just an aerial showing where the restroom and the leach area is. The vaults are proposed, and I'll get to a figure here right in this area right here next to this. Another area, there's the restroom facility also. This is prior to when the other system was installed, the manholes and stuff for the tanks. The area where the field is installed and where the vaults will be, the vaults will be in front of the picnic tables that you see there. I'm not going to go into these are flow values. They actually don't exceed the 2,000 gallons per day all the time. It's in the peak flows in the summer when they have the higher tourist rates. And that's primarily from the restaurant, not from just the people coming to visit. Because I don't know how familiar you are with it, but right now the Broadmoor, their tickets and they shuttle people in from Penrose stadium area, arena area into the site with shuttle buses. So the majority of the flow is from the restaurant use, and that goes down in the winter and such. Even the tourist in the winter goes way down. So it's the peak flows is why we're designing this system. These are flow values provided by Broadmoor as required by their their previous permit, and that's what pushed us to where we are today. Flows and calculations for the volume, we're proposing 22,000, I believe it's 20,000 of hard storage, and then we have tanks that boost that up to about 22,000.
Sir, excuse me, could you remind us of the date of the 1858 restaurant? I meant to look it up and I forgot.
The date,
When was the restaurant built, the 1858 restaurant?
boy,
Because that wasn't there when I used to go to.
no, the building's been there a long time. I don't know when they actually fully converted to that. It was right around, I believe it was around 2016, 17 when they started using it as more, it was a shop
Yeah.
before and had like little snacks and stuff in there, but not a full restaurant. On here, we show the field here, and then where we're proposing to put the vaults next to the field. And again, these are totally enclosed vaults. There will be no discharge. They will be pumped. City Colorado Springs Utilities has agreed to accept it. There's other places they could haul, but that's the closest place to haul. There are several options for hauling. Right now, the Broadmoor is proposing to use reliable sanitation for the hauling of the sewage.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Sure.
On the hauling, is that meeting all the standards of proposed truck routes at this point?
I'm assuming that it is. I do not know the specifics of where the trucks are driving, which way they're coming in.
Okay.
I don't know that detail. I'm not sure there is a truck route right through once you get all the way in the canyon there. There's not too many options. You got one or two roads to get into Seven Falls. I know the buses have certain routes they're supposed to go in and out of there. I don't know the details of
Okay.
their routing of
I
trucks.
was just trying to clear it in my own
Yeah.
mind. So, okay, thank you.
So that's really the presentation. I know there were some things I wanted to just go over as far as the issues. The application has been completely filled out. There were some previous discharge concerns. Again, even earlier in the water quality discussion of the quality of the water in the creek and kids playing in the creek downstream from here. There is no discharge from this. I guess the old system had a potential, although we were treating the effluent properly. The trucks right now during peak times, they're planning one a day, early in the morning. I've been told it's around 6. That could be adjusted. The capacity of the system allows, as long as they're pumping regularly, if they had to miss, we've got the capacity for that because of the volume of the 8 total tanks that we are proposing to install there. Right now, in my mind, the truck, yes, it is an additional truck. However, it's minimal compared to the amount of shuttles going in there right now. I know they're shuttling everybody from the Penrose. They do not allow cars to come into the facility now. So even though there's a lot of shuttles, it's a lot less than the number of cars that would be driving in there if they were still doing the old method. I remember days of driving in and parking inside of there. And that's not done anymore. So yes, there is traffic there. But everybody is shuttled over from the Penrose area.
This is Gary Sugar. A quick question. So can you confirm the restaurant today is closed and the restaurant will not open until these new tanks are installed and they can start then put the effluent into the tanks?
To my knowledge, that is the case. I have not been out there I can't personally confirm that. To my knowledge, that is what's happened. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have not been out there recently. On these, the reason for the vaults now versus tying in is the business plan of the cost of $1.5 million, and maybe that's up higher now. That was what it was a little year and a half ago. And the pumping is not cheap, but the flow and the tourists coming in, I believe, from my understanding, that they want to validate that it's viable and it's a reasonable thing to tie it in eventually. The plan is to tie in, but not to pump for the entire life of Seven Falls. That's not their desire. But initially, it is funded by the sales of the tourist stuff, and it's a, for lack of a better term, kind of a pay-as-you-go thing. The tourists are creating the money to provide the pumping and not have the layout of $1.5 million right now for them.
I'm picked up terminology from previous speakers we've had about this issue. So is there a plan for emergency storage if something happens, if the trucks can't get through and need more storage? And is there also a plan for redundancy
Well,
in the
there's,
system?
we have extra storage, 48 hours above what we need. And then there are alarms at certain levels that come off at different levels of storage of the tanks, so that it doesn't get full and then we have an alarm. We have alarms at 75%, 80%, so that they are aware of the fact that they do need to get pumps in there.
And has CSU also verified that eventually they would consider a tie-in to CSU?
Yes, they would.
Okay. And you've located where that would be?
Well, that's not, there's two main options, the Evans and Cheyenne Road and Penrose, and I think it's Mesa. And CSU has signed off on the application, but the full study of which is better has not been completed.
Ann's got a question online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, this is Ann up in Green Mountain Falls, and I'm 86 years old, so I remember when it was just a little snack shop there and not a lot of tourists. But I wondered, did you have to get some sort of permission to put in vaults from, a permit, a special dispensation sort of thing from the county?
No, we don't need it from the county. The original system was from a county approval. Now that we're over 2,000 gallons a day, we will need, what we're doing is we're applying for a permit through the state, which is PPACG, Colorado Department of Health and Environment. And yes, they will have to approve it. It hasn't fully been approved yet. We're in the process.
Well, I'm interested in that because, and this is off your problem, but Green Mountain Falls has that problem. We're in a very narrow environment with a stream and a lot more people than we used to have. And we do have to get permits for so many things now. I'll be very interested to see what the state decides in your case. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have Ann that also has a question in line. Go ahead, Ann. Chris, I'm sorry. Chris Crockett.
Hi.
Having trouble seeing you.
Sorry. This is Chris Crockett with Kono. I had a couple of questions. The first one is page 8 of, I think it's the application page, but I'm not 100% certain which page is page 8, but it talks in the last paragraph about future capital improvement projects might allow for tying in. And I just wanted to know whether or not those future projects are in anything other than a twinkle in someone's eye, or is there some movement toward that? And then secondly, you said something about peak flow and 4,000 gallons per day. I was under the impression from the letter from the engineering company that the peak flow, or that just sort of regular flow, regular capacity is 1 truck a day, 4,000 gallons per day, and that additional trucks would be expected to be added during peak flow. Could you flesh out a little bit what would be not only how much is peak flow, but also when does that occur? Is it a weekends in the summer thing? Is it an all summer thing? Just speak to a little bit what peak times would be. And then the last question that I have would be, could we have some assurances about reliable sanitation services other than that they're reliable?
So the flows,
like, is there a bond relationship? Is there a bond? Are they a bonded company? What happens if there's a wreck and there's a spill? That sort of thing.
in regards to the sanitation company that is used has to be permitted by Colorado Springs Utilities, and there's several of them. Reliable is one of them. So there are other options. I believe Reliable is large enough that if they had a problem with one truck, they would be able to come out there with another. So but all of them, and earlier on the meeting this morning, the CSU described that they have several options for permitted and approved hauling companies. With respect to the peak flows occur in the summer. They're generally in June, July. Because of our capacity of our tanks, we have about 22,000 gallons of hard storage. We have another 2,000 of storage within septic tanks. And if the pumping is kept up on a regular basis, which it has been and will be, the tanks are kept down, so we have extra capacity during those peak times. Is it possible that they have to run a couple trucks a day during very peak times? It's possible. They haven't had to do that because right when they had the permit before, they started pumping when the first system started having some issues, and they did exceed their capacity. They went to a pumping system there. And so the capacity will be there to add or to store during those peak times, even while they're pumping. If they're pumping 4,000 gallons, if they have a day where they go to 6 or 7, which isn't very often, usually the peaks right here, 4,800 in July one time. Most of them are under 4,500, a lot of them around 3,000. Again, pushes us to the PPACG level, but it's not, for all practical purposes, it's still a small system when you look at wastewater flows, but it exceeds the 2,000. So that's there for the pumping. And as far as, again, the additional trucks, if the alarm goes off, they would have to get someone out there, or they would have to stop the flows and shut things down. I don't anticipate that happening with the volume and capacity that we have. I think I answered the questions.
The future capital improvement project.
Oh, yeah, it's one of those. I don't have a great answer for you right now. The desire is to tie this thing in to the CSU. They're going to look at the alternatives. I don't have a date for you at this point of when that's going to happen. I know they're going to be looking at it, and as the system is installed and operated, they will be. I'm assuming the Broadmoor, as they do and they have in the past with our projects with them, they look at things on an annual basis of what the projects they're going to be working on.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou Springs. The $1.5 million figure would be to connect to Colorado Springs?
Correct.
What does this project cost?
They're still going through some finalizing, because I was actually talking to some of the installers this week. We anticipate right now that the cost of the tanks is going to be somewhere around 150 to 200,000. And a lot of that has to do with hauling rock off for the excavation.
Yeah.
It just depends on how hard it is to dig.
That's less than I thought it might be.
Yeah, it's still significant.
Yeah.
Another question, kind of getting off the tanks, but you mentioned down the road possibly tying in.
Correct.
Will that involve lift stations? And if so, is there as big a risk of a lift station with an overflow as there would be, say, a truck that people are concerned with today?
We don't know if it'll need lift stations. My guess is it will, because of if it goes to the Evans, it may not, but I still think it will need at least one lift station. Again, the full studies haven't been done at this point. In terms of lift stations having a spill versus a truck, I guess that's the kind of a gamble you take either way.
Okay.
We don't see very many accidents with these pump trucks, and the tanks on the trucks are secure and sealed. Could it happen? Yes, it could. A lift station to me would probably be worse, because it would continue to pump until it's discovered, if that was the case, if it had a spill, versus a truck is a limited, whatever's on the truck, 4,000 gallons.
Okay, I just wanted to clear in my own mind that the truck was as safe or safer than a lift station would be, and
I think
that kind of answers the question. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
One additional question. The tanks, from what what I heard you say, the tanks will all be buried, and so the tanks will all be underground and won't be visible from the, once they're installed?
That's
Other-
correct. There'll be manholes, access manholes to pump them, but they'll be tied together too, depending on, they don't necessarily have to pull each one up as they pump, but yes, they will be underground with manholes, lids.
Well,
Okay. Welling Clark, El Paso County. I want to thank you for providing more information, and with that, and I just want to make a comment. I saw the 2020 project, and that had a lot of missing data, and that was what was in the 2023 application here. That has been corrected, so I want to thank you for that. You answered some questions. There is no more leach line or leaching into the ground. It's all going to be transported off by a vehicle
That's
in
correct.
the future.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
And there's been a lot of concern about, the creek quality and stuff, and that goes away with the vaults.
Yes, sir. And I was looking at the history of the capacities that you've got on the charts right here. 1 truck a day at 4,000 gallons will prevent, you almost need 2 to 3 days to have a overload, other than 1 or 2 days, which are real high, which I assume to be weekends. And you stated you have is it a 48-hour holding capacity in case of something goes down?
Yes.
Okay, very good on that. I think your costs are lucky because the 2020 project was listed at 195K and this one's listed at 250K. So it's only 25%. And I've heard a lot of projects nowadays are going up by 60%. So good for you on that. I guess I have a question, but that's about tying in, and that's probably beyond your germane. My understanding is you are the engineering firm and you're not the Broadmoor management. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Very good. So it's not fair to ask you Broadmoor related operational questions.
Right.
Okay. I know I did that last time. I just want to make that clear. I did not like it when someone puts someone else up to take an arrow. Chair, I am done asking questions, but I will have some comments during the motion and second phase that I want the board to be aware of.
Judith, please.
Judith Rice Jones from the League. I have a question, and I apologize, maybe it isn't fair to ask you, but you did talk about the project back in 2020. And I understand from looking at articles in the paper and from friends who live in the area that in 2020, there were signs in the area notifying neighbors who would be impacted
Correct.
by this. But as I understand, and I don't live in the area, this time there has been no notice of the neighborhood. Is there some rationale or some?
Yeah, back in 2020,
Yeah.
those signs were when we were going through El Paso County.
Okay.
The county required the posting.
Oh, good for the county. Where's our city?
The state does not.
The county required that. What
Yes.
department would that have been in the?
The health
county?
department,
Health department.
yes.
Well, the county health department covers Colorado Springs as well, doesn't it? That's our health department.
Yes, it is.
Why would they not have required?
Because we're at the state level now and the county's not in, the system is now going through the state, not the county.
That's disappointing to think that the county would have higher requirements for community notification than the state. I need to write to my state representatives. Doesn't that seem problematic?
Can't argue with that one.
Okay. I mean, that seems somehow wrong.
Welling Clark, El Paso County. Judith, what that tells me is we need to start talking to our elected representatives at the state or get new ones.
But not an engineering concern, so sorry. Anyone else? Anyone online that you have, Jared? I don't see anyone.
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised from the CAC members,
Okay.
but they're also more than welcome to unmute if they want to just dive right in.
Anyone else while we have someone to answer your question? Well, if not, thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
And Jared, if we open this up for questions, would you mind coordinating since you've got the online as well?
I'll be happy to. So now at
comments, I
at the
should
public
say.
comment stage
Public
of this. So I'll start first with online since it takes a few extra steps on them. So I'll ask for anyone who's online who would like to provide public comment to use the raise hand function of Microsoft Teams. And we'll just kind of start a queue through that process. We will do the in-person commenters first. And so for in-person comments, feel free to line up or step up to the podium when you have a moment, and I'm still getting everything set up on my end. But at this point, we're ready to move forward on public comment. So again, anyone who would like to make public comment in the room, feel free to stand up to the podium.
And I would ask the CAC members not to ask questions. Allow these people their full 3 minutes to make their presentation, comments, whatever they want to do. So back to you, Jared.
I think we got our first one.
And
Good afternoon, committee members.
if you could state your name and.
I'm sorry, I'm just about to do that. Okay.
Okay.
My name's Kent Obie. I am a Cheyenne Canyon resident for a number of years. I'm actually born in near Cheyenne Canyon. I'm here to voice several areas of concern. And the first one has been touched upon just a few minutes ago about, as far as I know, there was no public notification about this. There was the 2020 notification briefly for a couple of weeks. And I think, just speaking for myself, but also for many of my neighbors, we were blindsided. And I think there's a substantial feeling that there should have been a public process, a public meeting. Several of my neighbors have reached out to our District 3 council representative suggesting that she convene such a meeting. That hadn't happened yet. I do worry about the impact. I live in Cheyenne Canyon. I'm fortunately not right on Cheyenne Boulevard, although driving down here to this meeting, I had a Seven Falls bus immediately in front of me and one immediately behind me and several going by in the other direction. And there is an impact, and I think those trucks will, even at 6 in the morning, and I'm not sure they'll always make it at 6, there'll be a further impact. My second area of concern is Cheyenne Creek. Decade ago, I spent 2 terms on the Colorado Springs Parks Advisory Board, and as many of you may know, South Cheyenne Creek flows out of Seven Falls Gate right into Cheyenne Canyon Park. And as many of you may know also, this spring being an exception, it's frequently bone dry. The water is taken out there. Both the city and the El Pomar Foundation do have water rights, and I know they tap it, but also Seven Falls taps it in the sense that when the flow over the falls isn't as much as they'd like, it's a recirculating waterfall, and that water goes back and forth over and over the Seven Falls. It's great for the tourists, but it's not great for the creek. There is evaporation. I've always argued that I think the amount of evaporation is underestimated. I also am concerned, all the water that's going into the flushes, the 1858 restaurant and the gift shop and stuff is water that's essentially coming out of the Cheyenne Creek alluvium. The Broadmoor has 3 wells up there. The biggest one, which they recently got permission to increase in size, is only, I think, 20 or 30 feet deep. And so all that water that's going to be carted off with all the bad stuff in it is essentially water that's no longer going to be going down the creek. And I think there ought to have been more consideration of the fact that the creek is impacted. And for this reason, I'm one of, I think, several people who'd ask you to stand by your turning this down that you did last time, or at least table it. So thank you very much. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, we're not doing questions, sir.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Donna Strom. I've lived in Cheyenne Canyon for 53 and a half years. I did a little math of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and me 7 people here. You are looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 230 living years in the canyon. We are all longtime residents. And as such, we have a huge investment in what happens in Cheyenne Canyon. So to address my first question, and this is just an unknown, I called Starsmore and I asked if they're septic or on city. They told me they're on city. That's very close to the Seven Falls Gate. So it escapes me. Anyone know the answer? That's one unknown. This morning it was said that the state has not yet signed off on this. That's two unknowns. I was counting and I heard 3, 4, 5, 6, not yet, we don't know, or I don't know. That's too many unknowns for this to move forward. Answers are not that hard to get, but they take time. So the idea of tabling this for two reasons. First, until it can be demonstrated that the majority of people who are affected by this are aware that it's happening. And the second one is, as you must know, if there are 7 people here, or 6, and 1 online, it's extremely difficult for us, especially me, to go door to door and say, hey, listen, did you know what's happening? I'm not interested particularly in people's responses. I am interested in the fact that they know. People live where they live and they want to know what's happening where they live. And if the ability, the power to enact a change happens without their input, what happens, guys? What's lost? What's lost is trust, goodwill, and most important of all, what's lost is cooperation. These are things that have to happen before a body such as yourself, and particularly the board of PPACG, make a final decision on this project. So I would love to see postcards go out to people, especially along Cheyenne Boulevard, but to people in District 3. And I would very much encourage you to ask that this be tabled until you can demonstrate that the people who are affected by this know what's happening. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Bensberg, and I am a lifelong Cheyenne Canyon resident and founder of Cheyenne Canyon Conservationists. I have 2 main points I want to stress today. And by the way, thank you all for your volunteer service. This is an unpaid position. It's very necessary. My first point is we really ought to postpone this matter and refer it to the Transportation Advisory Committee, because the routes that have been suggested are both troublesome, and there is perhaps a compromise to be achieved, but no one at the city of Colorado Springs has gotten back to me about this. But the neighborhood impact of these septic trucks and the routes that are available, as you might be aware, there's South Cheyenne Canyon Road, and there's also Mesa Avenue, and both of those can be used as ingress and egress. So apparently there's only 1 minute difference in the amount of time that it takes to travel from Seven Falls to the Las Vegas facility by the designated hauler. But as we've learned today earlier, and by the way, the representative from Intech, Mr. Good, he was very good this morning about answering all of our questions. Now, we didn't get all of them answered because they weren't pertinent to the Water Quality Committee, but that's why we saved best for last. So unlike 2019, when this project was proposed and there was a significant signage at the entrance of Seven Falls, there has been no public process or any attempt to engage the public, as the city often does when they have a 2C project that they want to implement. They're not always the best at it, but they make an attempt at the very least, and they're always there to answer the questions. So I would just ask you, because of these 2 points that I've just made, there's been no significant public process or attempt to communicate with the neighbors affected, including Cheyenne Mountain School District, which can be very quickly impacted at 7 o'clock in the morning when the trucks are coming back from wherever they're going to be routed. I would just ask you to respectfully postpone this until the Transportation Advisory Committee can look at it, and perhaps our friends in the city and city parks as well. I've reached out to both of them and haven't heard back. So with that, I'll stop and ask if you have any questions for me. Okay, well, I'll be available. Thank you.
Before we move to the online participants, I just want to make sure that everyone in person has had an opportunity. Okay, seeing no one else, I will go ahead and move Dana into a speaking role. We do have one person online. I will again ask if anyone who's online and is not a CAC member who would like to provide public comment to please use the raise hand function at this time. Otherwise, Dana, feel free to go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. My name is Dana Dugan. I live in the Broadmoor Heights neighborhood on Stanford, right adjacent to Strawberry Fields, and founded some of the nonprofits, Save Cheyenne, who fought for Strawberry Fields, Westside Watch, and Cheyenne Central. And I wanted to just support the comments that you've heard already from Commissioner Binsberg, Mr. Obie, and Ms. Strom. We did talk to when I was at Save Cheyenne, the state hydrologist, because we were concerned. I think Ms. Jones asked when Seven Falls opened, and that was August 13th of 2015. And what those of us that live close by noticed is after it opened, there was a dramatic drop in the water levels at the creek. It wasn't running dry at that point. That didn't start happening until the activity dramatically ramped up. But and so we started wondering about the wells on the property and asking about it. And that well number 3 is right up against the creek. It's perforated pipe for the first like 12 inches, I think, and likely not pulling from aquifer, but rather alluvial. And so given that there's an intent to tie into city water and sewage, and I was doing some math here, year 1 is 870,000 versus 1.2, I think is what Intech said this morning, to 1.5 million. I guess I just don't understand why we wouldn't want to encourage that path sooner rather than later, since there's so many other benefits, including not carting the sewage around the neighborhoods and some of those other concerns. So I just wanted to go on record asking that you consider those factors as well, and delay, and also so more of the neighbors can weigh in and be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do one more final call for those in the room as well as those online for any public comment on this application. Right, Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone else.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if Danelle's online or if you can address what water quality had this morning to present, because I don't have all of the information that they had, and I'd like to be aware of what they said.
Yeah. If you could, yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial if we knew if they recommended, didn't recommend, or.
Oh, I'm sorry. For that specifically, yes, they did recommend.
Okay, and
I'm sorry, yes.
Did they give any details or information we should be aware of?
I mean, I know it was a unanimous decision off the top of my head. I don't know if I can give any details, and if you're able to provide any more, or.
Yeah, I just think water quality is a very important aspect to this, and just wanted to make sure we were on top of all of that. I do realize that transportation's a city function more so than a CAC function. So I don't think we'll get too deep into that one.
Yep, Ann Werner, I'm your military and environmental planner. We had our second Water Quality Management Committee meeting on this project this morning. They voted unanimously to pass it, just like they did in June, because it passed all technical merits and all the updates and comments that were addressed by the engineer for the CAC's concerns had been adequately addressed. So basically what they talked about, and our chair is Jonathan Moore, was that the 208 review process is entirely technical. And that's the job of the SARC and then the water quality. And they didn't have any additional concerns that haven't already been addressed. So that's basically what they talked about. They encouraged the CAC process. They thought, the chair made a comment that he thought the public process and asking these additional questions was a positive one. It kind of helps round out other questions that may not be addressed through the 208 planning process itself. But as far as the technical merits go and the requirements of the 208 plan, those have all been met.
Okay. Any questions for Ann before she leaves? Put you on the spot, Ann. Okay, not online either, Jared. So, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll open up for discussion with the CAC members here.
Yeah, that you have to have a motion in a second before you can have discussion.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry.
You're right. I'm moving along too quick here. Okay, the proposed motions to recommend approval for the updated site application request from the Broadmoor Seven Falls holding tanks. So that's what we're looking at a motion for.
You need to clarify too for the, can I make a clarification for the audience?
Please.
Okay. Clarification for the audience and also for the members here. A person making a motion and a second is to basically enter discussion on the project. It neither means approve nor disapprove of the project as submitted. It's just a desire to hear it. Without a second, the motion will fail and it will not be heard.
Correct. Okay, at this point, do we have a motion?
This is
Mr.
Miley
Chair.
Foster. Oh, somebody, go ahead.
Go ahead, Miley.
I recommend I make the motion, the proposed motion, recommend approval of the updated site location application request for the Broadmoor Seven Falls wastewater holding tanks.
Okay, and I think Kathy's online.
I am. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now we can do discussion. And Miley, your mic's on. Do you want to do it first?
Well, okay. I was about to say Welling's got something to say, I know, but I'll go ahead first then. Okay.
We're holding Welling for a second.
It seems to me from what I've heard is the biggest objections is the people that live in that area were not informed, not even to the extent that they were informed in 2019 or whenever it were, 2020. And since that wasn't a requirement, because now it's a state permitting process, it seems to me that if they were given notice, then somebody was going above and beyond. It seems to me like it would have been nice if the Broadmoor would do that, because they're the ones that are making money off of this whole big deal. However, I understand why it didn't happen, because they didn't have to do it before. It was part of the county requirements. So I like the idea of Welling's idea of, well, we need to change the rules in the state, and we should be lobbying the state legislators so that in the future, the people in the neighborhood aren't caught like this. But I'm very reticent to tell a business that they can't do business. And so I'm thinking that we can't fix the real problem today. The real problem is getting the, if it goes to the state, then the state needs to kind of mandate that the citizens get more involved. And my other thought was maybe if the citizens had been involved earlier, it might have pushed the Broadmoor to say, okay, what the heck, we'll spend the $1 million and connect to the utilities. But they're a business and they're doing their crunching their numbers and they're looking for the most cost-effective way to solve their problem so that they can continue to properly do business and not, pollute the creek. And so they're looking for the most cost-effective way to do it now. And I can understand that perfectly.
Yeah, Welling. Okay. Welling wants to hold up anyone else. We got Chris on the line. Go ahead, Chris. No one in the room here.
Okay. I first wanted to thank the residents and commenters who came out and speak to us. We rarely have anybody but us in the room, so it's really nice to know that somebody out there, knows we exist and that we're not making our recommendations in a vacuum. I think it's very telling that so many people did come out, because I know from other work that I've done in bodies like this, that when you have one person come, it usually means there's a lot of people behind them and they are representing many voices. I also agree that the notification issue is troubling. In fact, until I heard the comments, I didn't realize, because I don't drive up to Cheyenne Canyon very often, that the notification that I saw the photograph of in the presentation, I thought that was still there. And I thought that everyone did have notice. So it is troubling to me that these decisions are made without public notice. Now, we are merely an advisory board, but I think what we advise the board of directors on is how this is going to play in Peoria. What their decisions are, how their decisions are going to be perceived by average citizens. So I hope that no matter how the vote comes out, that the information is transmitted to the board, that we feel that it would be a great thing for notifications to happen, even if they're not required. The other thing I would say is that it is somewhat troubling to me is that we have not heard from a representative of the Broadmoor. They want this, but they haven't sent anybody to talk to us about it. We're told they want this. You would think they want this, but they haven't sent anybody. And this is a little bit of an odd duck. Normally, you have a lift station, you site it here, it's going to be turned over to the utility company. And this particular project, while not a lift station, doesn't involve the utility, it involves private companies. And so that makes it a little bit of a different thing, and I think warrants additional scrutinization from our committee and from the board. And I guess I will just leave it at that.
You're the only one left, Welling.
You're kidding.
I'd like to say something too.
Okay, Ann, go ahead. I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. I just wanted to agree with those and the people who took the trouble to come to the meeting in person. I'm on the planning commission in Green Mountain Falls, and we get into trouble a lot because, the government, or, with all good intentions, makes plans. And sometimes people have notice and they don't show up, and then they're mad about it later. But I do think that we have to make the effort to help the grassroots grow and get people to come to meetings like these folks have, because there is another alternative available to the Broadmoor. And we do have some difficulties here in Colorado with water and all the increase in population. So I think I would just like to I would recommend that we think some more about it. Thank you.
Can. Now Ann's hand went up. Okay, Welling.
I will be voting no again. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters. We feel very much that it's important for citizens to be informed. I'm quite incredulous that they were not in this case. I will definitely be following through with my state representative on how it's possible that our state Department of Health does not require that. But in the meantime, I think the issues that have been raised are significant. This is an important it's an incredibly important symbol in our community. I mean, the Broadmoor and Cheyenne Canyon and the early history. And I just was reviewing in 1885, the students voted, the citizens voted like something like 89% to tax themselves to buy Cheyenne Canyon. I mean, it's just, it's such an incredibly historic part of our community. And I'm really disappointed that the notice wasn't repeated. It seems to me that's a good neighbor policy. But I think that's just not, I think we shouldn't accept that. I think that's a bad example to be putting forward. And of course, as a mother and a grandmother, I'm very concerned about water issues. And I've definitely seen issues in Cheyenne Canyon, with Cheyenne Creek. So there's no way I could vote for this particular program. Thank you.
Anyone else? And I'm seeing no one online. So now your turn, Welling.
Okay. Welling Clark, El Paso County. And I'm speaking as a former president of a neighborhood organization, as well as someone who goes by the book and follows regulations. So it's kind of torn. I want to say this. This committee does not have, and I'm saying this just for the public, does not have the power to postpone or table. We have our power is in to review it. Does it meet CAC requirements? And then we approve it if it does, and we disapprove it if it does not. Having said that, what I see now is that it meets the PPACG CAC requirements. What I also see, it does not meet the requirements that a good project should have. And that's a failure. And I want this in the records. That is a failure of the government at the state level. I am appalled at the failure and the breakdown of the public process by the state. In accordance with the PPACG regulations and all, I will be voting in approval of this process because it has met its goals. I will be glad to go before anybody and voice frustration and anger at the lack of public process. My recommendation to this CAC, and I want this to be from me or the CAC to the board, is that the board engage the state to ensure this never happens again. That the city of Colorado Springs meets with the Broadmoor and meets with the residents to go over the transportation plan. There is a trucking transportation plan where there are limits of what can go where based on the gross vehicle weight of the vehicle. I also recommend that the city of Colorado Springs, because this is in their wheelhouse, encourage is a very light word, but the Broadmoor and the public need to have face-to-face meetings to resolve issues before it comes this far. Okay. And I want, as a member of the CAC, my duty is to look at the regulations, which PPACG, were they met? Yes. Was the spirit met? No.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I recommend that the city and the county representatives, elected officials, engage the state to fix this immediately. And before, I also, going back again with regards to this truck route issue, that should be vetted through the city of Colorado Springs, because the majority of the concerns we have are neighborhoods within the city of Colorado Springs. If the state does not require that, we have a failure of our state level government regulations, and that needs to be addressed and adjudicated. Everything that was said and stated by citizens was accurate. And when public process ceases to exist, you stop having a representative government. That is for the record in the minutes. Sorry, Jared. Okay. Broadmoor owns the water rights, from my understanding. So when the creek goes low, they're the ones that control it from that standpoint. I just wanted to say that for the public so they're aware of that. That's my understanding. But I am through, but I'm very angry that this entity, this committee, that this organization was put in this position because either willful neglect, incompetency, or intentionally by entities that allowed this process to come forward and fail. I'm sorry, sir. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't been on this committee as long as Welling, so I'm sorry. But we have heard at the last meeting and at this meeting that the Broadmoor is proposing that they want to connect to the city utilities. I'm just wondering why we couldn't suggest that that would be a good solution. And is there any possibility that they could consider, since that would certainly improve the process, if they could consider moving that ahead faster than they've planned? We heard again today that that is the long range plan. And this started back in 2000 or in 2019, if I understand correctly. And that is an option that they have. And I can't follow the costs that people were throwing out, and I certainly have no idea of the costs. But certainly that seems like a very positive
And that can be
solution.
included in our records
Thank you.
past.
Why don't you make that comment that goes in and goes before the board?
Thank you.
Because we will have city representatives, council members
Thank
that sit on the board.
Thank
They're
you.
the ones that can approve, table, or change directions.
Well, since that is a long-range plan, just moving it up a little faster, especially if this has been ongoing since 2019, it just seems like that would solve a lot of issues. And I don't understand why it isn't already the chosen route. So thank you.
Could I say something more too? Just
Please,
before-
Ann. Go ahead.
Well, I've been on this CAC for 5 years. And I remember when the CACs, or when the regional governments were established in the 70s, and the citizens advisory committees, and it was to get people involved in understanding their government. And when I was appointed from Green Mountain Falls, I was told that I'm there just as a citizen. I don't have to be an expert, but if I know what's going on in my neighborhood and I'm concerned, I should feel free to vote as I feel right. And so I know they've fulfilled the regulations, and that's fine. But even Ann Werner hinted that, you know, they did what they can do as engineers, but we are the citizens. And so I just wanted to encourage everybody to do what you think is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on the line? I see. Is that a hand up, Jared?
That's Ann's.
Oh, I'll take it down. I'm sorry. I get mixed up here.
I think hers is going backwards today.
Did it go down?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. Jared, if possible on this one, can we do a roll call vote so that we have a, since we've got people
yep.
online,
Yep.
that way we make sure we have it accurate.
That works. So
Yeah.
I will start with those in the room, and if those online can just be ready to unmute whenever we get to the online area.
And a yes votes in favor of moving this onto the board, and no vote tables it.
Okay. Thank you.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you also please state your name when you vote for the record?
Yeah, it doesn't table it. It just, it doesn't, it's not recommended.
For our meeting. Correct, correct.
So for those online who may not have heard that, and just to clarify,
Please.
just because that might not have picked up from the room, yes vote is a favorable recommendation to the board of directors. A no vote is an unfavorable recommendation to the Board of Directors. Any questions on that before I start call and roll?
No.
Okay, we'll start on the south side of the room. Judith. Thank you.
Judith votes no.
Gary.
I vote yes.
Miley.
I vote yes.
Roy.
I vote no.
Ed, as the chair, I'll wait for you until the end. Welling.
Yes, with the caveat stated before the board.
Okay, going on those online. Anne.
I vote no.
Bill Bowles. Bill, do you vote yes or no? We'll circle back to Bill. Chris Crockett.
I vote no.
Bill, I see your hand raised. Are you able to come off mute? Let's chat is not functioning on this meeting. So we got so we'll continue. Kathy Heisey.
Yes.
Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Summer Earthsong.
I vote yes.
And Bill, if you're able to either come off mute or at least come on camera with a thumbs up or thumbs down, I don't. Oh, you're off mute. There you go.
I figured it out. No.
And Chairman
Yes.
Bills. I have a final vote count of 8 yeses and 5 nos.
So that will move on to the board with an affirmative.
Yes.
With an affirmative, but with the comments stated by the individuals requested to go before the board.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
will
you.
get. Okay, item C, community traffic safety report. Danelle, I believe if you can do that online.
I am online. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My apologies that I can't be there in person today, but I will share the community traffic safety education review with you. And I do have some of my colleagues in the room as well, just in case there are any questions that I can't answer. So this document began in 2022, last fall. We started working with a consultant to kind of identify some groups in our region who are educating people on traffic safety. That might include law enforcement, local municipalities, nonprofits, pretty much anybody we knew of that was in the region. And topics included everything from seatbelt safety to car seat safety, impaired driving, motorcycles, any of these various regions. It was kind of our perception going into this that there might be some groups that might be overlapping in effort, or a lack of communication or coordination among the groups that are doing these efforts. And also there might be gaps in the region. So this really included a lot of both internet research and surveys and interviews with those folks who are providing some of these services in the area. And then based on all of this outreach, we put together a matrix and a report that do kind of put onto paper what are some of the organizations that are doing traffic safety education, what areas are they working in, and try to identify some of those gaps and recommendations for the future. Already we at PPACG have kind of used this information to support a successful grant application to be able to hire a regional traffic safety champion for the region. And it's our hope really that this document can not only inform the public and those groups in our area that are doing traffic safety education, but also be kind of a starting point for that safety champion to move forward and help facilitate better coordination, better efforts, more efforts, identify areas where we can grow activities, and also work very heavily with Drive Smart Colorado, which is, it is a nonprofit, but is also under the PPACG umbrella. So that's kind of the purpose of the document and the future of the document. We kind of hope that the safety champion can update this kind of information going forward and kind of make it more of a living document. We did bring this to CAC as an informational item a few months ago. We took it back and added a little bit of information after some additional interviews with municipalities. And now we are bringing it to you today, hoping that we can get a recommendation for the board to accept this document. Happy to answer any questions if you have them, but that's kind of what we're looking for today.
Question, Roy?
Danielle, this is Welling Clark, El Paso County.
Mm-hmm.
From reading this document, and when you said living document, it looks like it was an attempt to compile everyone's different efforts for safety into one concise document that will be continually updated, with the hope that this is used by all entities to ensure there is proper coordination and integration of efforts. Is that a good assumption?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We kind of hoped that it would be a baseline, so that in the future we can go back and measure, well, have some of the things we have done been effective? Can we identify areas where we can really be useful? Because we don't want to duplicate efforts. We don't want to, and we also want to foster communication between, like, if there's various groups doing very similar work and they don't know about each other, I think we can help just build some relationships there.
Chris, do you have a question?
I do. Danielle, thank you for bringing this back to us. It is a very important topic, and I appreciate your efforts and the efforts of everyone who was questioned about how they do things and their contributions to it. Talk to me a little bit about the safety champion. I think that's a great thing to do. It's wonderful to have somebody who's willing to take that on. Is there funding for such a person, or are you hopeful that it can be added to someone's duties, or that someone from one of the outlying jurisdictions will take it on? What are the thoughts about not only identifying but actually empowering a safety champion?
So PPACG, utilizing some of this information from this effort, actually put in an application with the Highway Safety Office, the Colorado Highway Safety Office, and we have received a grant. It begins on October 1st, and that will cover this safety champion salary along with a couple of other tasks. We actually, I believe, put the job description out into the world earlier this week. So we're looking actively to hire someone. And if you know anybody, please let me know. We will happily send them the link to apply.
Thank you very much. Is that a one-year grant, or is it an ongoing grant? We have to keep applying for it. What kind of grant is it?
It is a 3-year grant. So it's 1 year with 2 additional years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anyone else? Judith?
Sorry, this is from a grandmother. I hope I can get hold of myself. A good friend of mine, maybe I can't. A good friend of mine, Richard Law, who's the former principal of a District 11 elementary school, and his mother-in-law, who is a colleague of mine at the university. Their son was killed on I wrote to him to get the details today. He was on Palmer Park. He was in first grade. He was walking to Jefferson Elementary. In January of 1989, he was run over by a beer truck. When my daughter was at Steele, the city, I'm sorry, just brought her back. District 11, thank you, was participating in Safe Routes to School. My daughter went to Steele Elementary. Get hold of myself. I will in just a minute. Safe Routes to School gave us funding, and one of the things that we did with funding, this is a while back, some of you may remember throwaway cameras. We were able to buy throwaway cameras, which we gave to students and their parents. Students and their parents were then asked to go over the route that they took to school, whether it was walking or riding bikes, and use the cameras to take pictures of places where they thought there were safety issues. And something very positive resulted from that, which is good. I'm trying to focus on the good. So as a result of that, we went to the city. I might add that we were helped a great deal. I'm sorry, I will bring this up. We were helped by a great deal by a traffic engineer who was then in the traffic engineering department, who said at one of our meetings that it would be over his dead body that we would get a traffic signal on Weber Street. That actually helped us a great deal. That ensured that we got a traffic signal. But in the meantime, the studies that were done by the parents with the cameras were very effective, both in suggesting to parents that they were maybe too close to an intersection with a stop sign that was known for people running stoplights. And I think it greatly increased safety for our students, certainly made us as parents feel a whole lot better. It was an incredibly successful program. So obviously, I am very much attached to this program. And I was kind of disappointed when I noticed that there are currently no programs in my school district. There is a program right now up in Monument, and they have received federal grants for 2 projects. One of them is connecting a number of schools, and one of them is building a bridge so that a path that students can take without going on a street will be completed. I did hear from the city's traffic engineer, who ironically happens to be my next door neighbor. Poor guy. That one of the reasons that the city is not really enthusiastic about the program is apparently involves a great deal of paperwork. I have to say, as a mother and a grandmother, I don't care, because it has been shown to be effective. I went to college, I went to grad school in Los Angeles. One of my goals in leaving Los Angeles and coming back to Colorado Springs, where I go to Colorado College, was to make sure that I never lived again in a community where 3/4 of the land use is devoted to the automobile and the traffic accidents and the traffic issues that resolve. So I've long been interested in this program. And I always follow programs that are successful. And another program that's been very successful in many communities, I can give you a list, is Vision Zero, where there's an entire focus on trying to get rid of those fatality numbers. And since we've had COVID, during COVID, and this has been documented by the State Highway Department, we've had a lot less people driving in those 3 years of COVID. And the succeeding year after COVID, our traffic fatalities have continued to increase despite the fact that people were driving less. So I'm feeling incredibly frustrated, and I really want to see a program that we know works, that has been proven to work. And I would like to suggest that we consider inviting someone from the city's new Smart City /Innovation office, because one of the things that they're trying to do is standardize data. So we don't have one set of data from the police department, another set of data from the fire department, another set of data from the emergency services. So we have a better handle on the accidents and what the cause of the accidents was. One of my first meetings for this committee, we had heard from the State Highway Department about fatalities. And I was kind of appalled to see that the data was 2 to 3 years old. With the technology that's available now, it just seems incredible that the technology could be that far behind. So I'm just wondering if these great efforts that are being made with Smart City, unfortunately, Ryan Trujillo, who is in charge of that office, is now, well, not unfortunately, he's now working for our new mayor. But that's one of their goals, was to try to make the data more current and more comprehensive. So I would suggest that might be the thing that we look at. But one of the things that, this is wonderful, I really appreciate the information but I didn't see anything here about efficacy. And which one of the programs do we know works? And from what I've seen, two programs we know that work are Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero. So I just would like to raise the question about why we don't consider those. And then since we hosted a Spanish student when my daughter was a junior at Palmer, I still feeling with those unknown parents in Italy for the Italian exchange student who was killed in the crosswalk at 7:30 in the morning in front of Doherty High School. So again, I know that that's probably more an effect of being a mother and a grandmother than being a wise retired academic librarian. But I think it's really important that we look at data, we look at programs that work, and we move to support those programs that have been proven to work. Thank you. A little long-winded.
Certainly. I will say that PPACG actually is undergoing a study right now to look at the cause of traffic accidents or traffic crashes, particularly since the beginning of COVID, because you are right in that we have seen an increase in fatalities despite less vehicle miles traveled. So we are diving into that a little bit with the intent to identify potentially any countermeasures that are successful or are not successful. So the hope is that we can make sure that the efforts that at least that we do through PPACG are actively targeting current causes.
Thank you.
Is that all you had on that?
I'm sorry that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think research into legalized medicinal marijuana, whatever you want to call it, as well as other substance abuses need to be factored in as well. So those are relatively new things. Any other questions, comments? One more chance, Welling.
I'm done.
Okay, the proposal is that we accept the community traffic education review and pass it to the board for their acceptance.
Welling Clark, El Paso County. Motion to approve.
Rosenthal, Manitou Springs, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I just want to say, at least combining this gets rid of the silo effect. It's not perfect, but we can do more. And this, my understanding, this is a document of what local government entities are doing in here. And maybe what's been brought forward by what's not in here should be made available to them to incorporate into their programs. That might be a better way actually to hook that in.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other comments, questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous, Jared. And Danelle, you're up again, it looks like.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, before we get too far on, I just want to correct an error that I made in counting on action item 5B. I accidentally miscounted. I initially reported as an 8-5 vote. It should be 7-5. We had one member drop off who I didn't account for in my count.
Okay.
So still passed, but I just want to make sure everyone knows what the
Thank you.
count was.
Okay, Danelle, you're up.
Perfect. Jared, can I share my screen so I can share the PowerPoint?
Yes, you can.
Provided I have the PowerPoint up, of course. Okay. And it doesn't want to go on the right screen. So we wanted to bring this to the CAC as an informational item, just to let everybody know that we are starting the long-range transportation plan here at PPACG. And this is a plan that will span from from 2025 out to 2050. Let me bring my notes up so I don't forget anything. As you might know, PPACG has several roles within our communities. And one of those is that we are the federally designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the urbanized area. And so as the MPO, we're required to conduct a few different planning activities. One of those is creating the long-range transportation plan, which, as I said, is a long-range kind of 20-plus year time span. And then also the Transportation Improvement Program, which is more of the short-range program where we actually program funding for projects. So this LRTP, we're required to update it every 5 years. And then another thing to note about it is that any projects that want to be, or any projects that are intended to be developed with federal funding need to be in the LRTP. You have to be consistent with the LRTP in order to move a project into the TIP. The LRTP also has to be fiscally constrained. And really what that just means is that the project list can't exceed the funding that is reasonably expected within the region. So when I say that our MPO addresses the urbanized area, this is kind of the map for our MPO boundary and the study area of the LRTP. And it differs pretty considerably from our Council of Governments, our PPACG area. So PPACG really incorporates all of Park and Teller and El Paso counties. And this is a much more limited area. And I know that's quite confusing for a lot of people, especially when you add in to things like PPRTA and the fact that the rural areas around us may be part of PPACG, but they actually fall under the Central Front Range Transportation Planning Region. So this just kind of shows what municipalities and jurisdictions fall under each of these organizations, so that as we move forward with the LRTP, you can kind of understand what kind of area we're talking about with regard to projects. So the Central Front Range Transportation Planning Region, they have their own planning documents and processes. Those are run through CDOT. PPACG is really specific to the MPO, at least for the LRTP and the TIP. So this is just a quick graphic to show that the LRTP really is not, it is a standalone document, but it is fed by several different component plans. So for example, we had a congestion management process that we put together that was adopted by the board late last year. All of our local plans, so Connect Cause or the transportation plan in Fountain, all of these various municipality documents, county documents, those all feed into the LRTP. The Tri-County study that was completed, the regional freight, and it's a freight study, not a freight plan, but that is going on right now. That'll feed into the LRTP. The transit plan and the specialized human services plan, those are being led by Mountain Metropolitan Transit with some help from PPACG. And then also the active transportation plan, which is also kicking off right about now. So all of these documents play a part in developing the LRTP, and we just wanted to make it really clear that the LRTP needs to align with those documents, and it's really not intended to be a top-down kind of PPACG plan. It's really bringing together all of these pieces. This is just a quick timeline of what we're doing now and what we intend to do in the future. So up at the top here, the CMP, the Tri-County study were completed last year. The freight study is ongoing, transit plan and specialized human services plan, and also the active transportation plan. All of these are going on right now. The LRTP up to this point, really we've been focusing on a lot of planning, preparation, existing conditions, setting up some of our traffic demand model and some of that. We're moving now into more of the public engagement, vision and goals, that kind of thing that will eventually develop into the process to select projects, evaluate the projects, and then actually develop the document, which you can see is really mostly mid to late next year. We'll have the draft plan, the public open houses, and address those comments with the intent to adopt the plan in January of 2025. And then we do have a graphic here, just shows you a little bit of the overarching process. So the plan is to first create, what is our vision? Building on that, what are the goals and objectives? Building on that, what are our transportation needs? At that point down in the bottom here, we would produce the fiscally constrained project list. That project list would then be evaluated specifically for greenhouse gas considerations, and also for Title VI and other considerations as well. And then we would go up to where we have the actual draft document. So there's a lot of steps that have to be taken before you actually get the full LRTP project, or the full LRTP report, even as a first draft. Just for CAC to build a little bit of understanding about the roles of our jurisdictions, our municipalities in the LRTP. So these are all things that we're really relying on all of our cities, our towns, and our counties to contribute to the LRTP. Because as I said, it's really all of the needs, all of the projects, they all come from the towns, the cities, the counties. And so these are all items that we've really asked for them to help us with as we build out the LRTP. And then of particular emphasis I want to make here for the CAC, we have two phases outlined for public engagement. The first phase is what we're really kicking off now. So we did hire a consultant who specializes in public outreach and public involvement, specifically to help us with this LRTP. And so we worked with them to develop a public involvement plan that really kind of outlines all of the things that we at PPACG are going to do to make sure that we make sure all of our stakeholders and communities are reached and have an opportunity to be heard. We are launching a transportation survey for the region. So this will be a public survey to gather information about transportation habits, interests, and goals as well. It'll be available in both English and Spanish, digital and hard copies. And we're hoping to launch this the first week of August. So we would really love the CAC's help in spreading the word around that the survey is available. Please send it out to your communities if there's anything we can do to help with that engagement. We would like to get as many responses as we can. Another thing that we have done is to establish a regional transportation plan advisory committee. And this is an advisory committee that has representatives from a variety of different local agencies and organizations throughout the region. I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 55 members who have been invited to participate in these meetings, and these folks will really help us give us input to help shape some of the elements that go into the LRTP. And then in addition to that, if there are organizations that we've identified that may not be able to participate in another way, or that we feel it's really important to hear their voice, we'll also do additional, kind of one-on-one interviews. So we may do an interview with, for example, Fort Carson to better understand, what are Fort Carson's concerns and needs with regard to transportation in that area. So those are kinds of some of the things that we're doing mostly this year and into the beginning of next year. And then phase 2 of that public engagement will really happen mid to late next year. And that's really when we put our draft report together. So we will have a public comment period. We will have open houses where we'll be available to answer questions and take comments directly. We will, of course, have the document go through the committee process, and we'll have a public hearing. So we definitely want to engage as many folks as we can and make sure there's ample opportunity for people to be heard. And again, we really love the CACs, just your voices, but also your ability to reach out to your individual communities and spread the information that this is out there, and let them know how they can get involved. And then this is the last slide. This is just the next steps that are happening. So our initial Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Committee, or RATPAC, that meeting takes place on August 2nd. Our public survey, we anticipate launching right after that meeting. And that survey, I believe we will be looking to wrap that up right after Labor Day. So there will be at least a month to gather information. Developing the vision, goals, and objectives will be our next kind of big step in the process. We are developing our traffic demand model, as well as our regional forecast. And that regional forecast really talks about where our jurisdictions, where our municipalities anticipate growth in the next 25 years. And again, we're taking a very bottom-up kind of approach where we as PPACG aren't planning to go out and tell, everyone this is where growth is going to happen. What we're trying to do is really gather information from each of those jurisdictions and use that to inform our plan. And then finally, the last thing that we're really working on right now is a financial plan. And that is really putting together the details of what funding streams we anticipate and how much funding we anticipate coming into the region that we can utilize through this LRTP process. So I hope that gives you guys a little bit of an overview of what we're planning to do for the next 18 months or so. Happy to answer any questions, or if you have questions later, happy to answer emails or talk with you one-on-one as well in the future.
Chris has a question.
Certainly.
Thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate this because I think it's a big topic for us. This is really more in the nature of a request. Will please push out the link to the public survey when it is ready so that we can share it with our communities as
Yes,
requested? Thank you.
yes.
And is the Rat
Absolutely.
Pack full? You got everybody you want on the Rat Pack? Is it?
I believe we do, but it will be, I mean, it will be open to the public. So if people want to log in and listen, they're welcome to. As the chair of the CAC, Ed Dills has been invited to that and has very graciously said he will attend those meetings. So we do appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, John.
So Chris, I think Kono was invited. Did that not, is that something you didn't see? Do we know who we invited from Kono?
I'm going to bring up the stakeholder list right now. Because I believe Kona was invited.
I'm sorry.
That may very well be the case, and I just don't know about it because I'm not an employee. I just attend these meetings on their behalf.
Oh, okay, great.
But that would be nice to know that if Kono has jumped in there.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's always difficult. Like Danelle had said, we're at like 50, 55 or whatever, right? So you want to be inclusive, but then you end up having like 300 people and you can't then actually get anything done. So as it was, I think our target was 40 and like when we're at 55. So, but again, they're all open to the public. We're not going to say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not on the committee. We don't want to. No, we will take all input and we will, and back to your original sort of comment, we're going to push this out. So hopefully the League of Women Voters will circulate the survey. Kono will do it. NEPCO, I believe, is on our list. So again, we'll send it to you guys and you send it to all of your connections. It would be very much appreciated because again, the value in this sort of survey is it's basically self-selecting, right? It's not a statistically valid. We went and spent tens of thousands of dollars to, get a list and figure this out. It's self-selecting, right? So it depends on the people who want to participate. So for that to really give us any sort of depth, it really needs to get out far and wide, and then people have to care enough to answer the, whatever it was, 20 questions. So, oh, that's like a game, 20 questions. No, I can't remember how many questions we had to know, but
I think it's 15, but very close.
All right, well, I'm going to flip the cards over because you can't guess our mystery guests. So, all right.
Thank you.
I will say this, that if there's any questions or any information you want me to share back and forth, let me know. Since all of the CAC members, I think you all have my email. If not, you're welcome to go through Danelle either way.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Sorry, topic of interest. Dating back. So about 4 or 5 months ago, the city's smart city department, which is now chaired by Carlos Tamayo, did a whole day of presentations at the city auditorium, which was really quite fascinating about all the things that they're doing. And there were a lot that had to do with transportation. CSPD was heavily involved. And I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be of interest to bring them here to talk about the two things that relate, I think, to what we've been talking about, the data collection and coordination to make sure we don't have it going off in 16 directions. And then what they're doing with transportation, because one of my favorite topics did not come up so far, and that's micromobility, which is growing by leaps and bounds in the neighborhood in which I live. I just cannot believe every day there are more of those green lime scooters and things I don't even know the name of. It looks like a wheel with a board on it. And that's really a huge thing in Europe right now. And there's a wonderful free online thing called Smart Cities World that has a lot of information about this incredibly move towards multi-mobility and micro-mobility. So asking them to come and talk about that might be of interest. And I'm also really interested to see the list because Alan Beauchamp and I have been working on a list of all the multiple bicycle and walking groups there are in Colorado Springs. And it turns out there are many of them. And lastly, I've been serving on the Innovations in Aging Environment Committee, and I'm considering, knowing Alan Beauchamp, I'm considering getting a three-wheeled bicycle, which I've decided I could actually consider because they don't have to call it an adult tricycle anymore. That whole thing changes the whole. So I think Innovations in Aging is looking at that issue about transportation and sidewalks. There are a lot of areas that have sidewalk issues in the community. So I would encourage you to extend that to pedestrians and sidewalks and those issues as well. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And when I talked about the active transportation plan, or I mentioned the active transportation plan, I failed to define that term.
Thank you.
So active transportation really refers to bicycle and pedestrian related projects. So that hopefully we'll capture quite a bit of that in our active transportation plan, which will then roll into the LRTP. But I did want to mention that Alan is actually a member of the Rat Pack. So hopefully he will, hopefully he'll have some good involvement for us. I would really like that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Danelle.
Absolutely, happy to.
I'm losing my voice, I'm sorry. Yeah, you beat me to it. Okay, any other announcements? Comments?
I just want to make a comment to this committee and to the people present and everything. If I said anything that was inappropriate, I apologize. I do not wish to bring dishonor on this group. I just get very angry when I perceive a wrong done to citizens. And I didn't lose my temper, but I was getting angry. So if I offended anybody, I do apologize for that. I do stand by the fact that without citizen involvement in a public process, we do not have representative government.
Thank you, and I don't think any of us were offended whatsoever. We agree. So, okay, any other comments?
Chris Crockett has her hand raised.
Okay, I sit now.
Sorry, I keep on having to chime in. First of all, I want to say no offense at all. Weldon, you said exactly what I think we're all feeling. And it is frustrating when, and I sort of feel like it's our highest and best use for us to communicate to the board that before they vote on something, it's really good to involve the public. And if that's what our ultimate advice to them is, yay. I also wanted to share with everybody that Kono is involved in the mayor's 100-day listening tour that he will be rolling out in August and September. We're doing our best to invite residents to the public forums and want to encourage PPACG staff and interested, members of the public to set aside one Friday in August to attend one of these listening sessions near their homes. That input is going to directly translate into the mayor's newly created strategic planning task force. And then the second item that Kona wanted me to share with you is that we will be starting our fall cohort of Neighborhood University on September 12th and would love to have anybody participate who has not yet had a chance to do so. Thank you.
Someone else's hand. I
Danelle's.
Oh, okay. I couldn't see who it was.
It's
Yeah,
mine.
Danelle.
I just had one quick comment. PPACG has published a Pikes Peak Regional Mobility Guide. We have hard copies there at the office, but it's also online. If anybody would like a link to that, I'd be happy to send it to you.
You send that link to the entire CAC, Danelle?
Certainly.
Makes it easier. Anyone else? Oh, Jared, I think.
So a few things I thought Danelle was going to take it as well, but a couple of things I just wanted to provide an update to the group on. And it was mentioned earlier, but Colorado Springs did appoint 3 members to the CAC yesterday during its regular meeting. It has to also go through board approval, so that's why they were not able to make it today. So the board will put that most likely on consent agenda on August 9th, but their names are Maddie Gullickson, Callie Standard, and Chuck Theobald. So we should have these 3 Colorado Springs positions filled by the next time the CAC meets. I'll also say the subcommittee on membership is meeting later this week to review.
Friday.
Say that again?
Or nomination committee.
Yes.
Thursday, Friday.
So to fill the at-large positions that we have. I also, not membership related, but I also wanted to throw out there, and Danelle, correct me if I'm wrong, or John, do the same thing. The Unified Planning Work Program document is out for public comment right now. You can go on our website to review that and provide any public comment to Danelle. Unless there's anything else Danelle wants to add to that.
Nope, I believe that comment period ends August 16th.
Yeah. And that's all I've got from PPACG side.
Okay. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah. You saved us from choking.
Very nice. Well, thank you, everyone. This wasn't the most pleasant meeting, but we got through it, and thank you for bearing with me. I had some medical issues going on today, and got through it, and everything's great. So thank you again. So nothing else. We are adjourned.